For more on this issue, I want to welcome on combat veteran Chad Robichaux, the founder of the Mighty Oaks Foundation and a surrogate for the Trump campaign. So Chad, right now we are looking in our cities, and it's not just Portland as we've covered or Seattle, it's also New York City, it's also Baltimore, it's also Chicago. We're seeing a lot of unrest in the cities of our streets, and we're also seeing at the same time an exodus from a lot of these cities. Do you think that these two things are coordinated?
Absolutely, they are. I mean, you have in July alone, you've had 177% increase in shootings, 50% increase in murders, a direct result of the actual defunding of the police. $1 billion was defunded from the New York City police budget. $150 million was defunded from the LAPD. I mean, I believe these mayors and these governors are not only civilly complicit, but I think they're criminally. I believe they're criminally liable for the results of so many Americans that are being injured and even killed. We have American citizens being held up by thugs by gunpoint with no police to be able to help them right now. And so I don't blame Americans for wanting to leave these cities and move elsewhere and get away from these cities. And I think it's going to backfire on the Democrat-led cities. And ultimately in November we're going to see this turnaround. And this is not what the citizens of these communities want. Obviously they're leaving, but there's a recent poll that showed 81% of inner city blacks did not agree with defunding the police. In fact, they wanted more funding for the police.
Right, and that's something that we've heard several times, because when you see your own community being destroyed, it's different than the people who are watching it in television and saying, well, you know what, this is part of the overall movement. This is something that we have to accept. That's easy to say when your business isn't the one being burned down, or when your neighborhood isn't the one where people are on the streets being beaten, such as in the situation in Portland or in this, New York City. We've showed multiple videos at this point, but you build on that. I want to build on that poll that you just mentioned, because I think that's an excellent point. It's the idea that a majority of blacks, in fact, an overwhelming majority, don't want to defund the police. In fact, we just showed a video of people in Baltimore saying that very thing. But also right now, according to Rasmussen, 50% of people want there to be a stronger crackdown on these protests. 72% say they're concerned about the violence that are accompanying these protests, and 62% say this will influence their vote. So when it comes to that latter number, the 62% influencing their vote, do you presume that that means that they are more willing to go for perhaps a Republican or a different type of leadership than the Democratic one that they've seen so far?
Yeah, I think if there's a silver lining in all this madness, and it's very hard to find one because it's so grotesque, the level of pandering and putting Americans at risk to pander to the anarchists and the extreme left social movements that are trying to erase our history and our country and our culture, our way of life, to usher in socialism. I think in November we're going to see people that are going to make a decision that they never made before. They're going to leave the Democratic Party, and I just seen you had an incredible candidate out of Baltimore. Who's actually one of those that are running for office as a Republican and exposing the Democratic Party, who have been in charge of these cities for 50 years now. And these cities are just in shambles and ruins, and the people that they're using for votes every 4 years, they start race wars and they pander to the inner city, the inner city people, and they make promises. And that's why November is going to be so different. And that's why we're going to see President Trump reelected. Look, I am, like you said when you introduced me, I'm a surrogate on the Trump campaign for veterans policy, and I have such an easy job because I don't have to go around and talk about a candidate's promises. I'm able to talk about the last 3 years of actual achievements and actual policies that the president has put in place to help veterans in the veteran community. And part of the campaign strategy is every segment of every demographic in the United States: women for Trump, Latinos for Trump, blacks for Trump, veterans for Trump. We're being told as we go out, don't go out and make promises. Joe Biden's making promises for 50 years still. But go out and talk about the things that the president has done, that President Trump has done in the last 3 years. And it's so easy about to do that because President Trump has done so much for every demographic in this country and policies that change their way of life for the better. He's putting America first.
Here we are a couple months later, and we're still talking about unrest on the streets, and we're not talking about police reforms, something that even went to Congress and went nowhere. Democrats shut it down because of the lack of the abolishment of qualified immunity, and here we are having the same conversation. But what's happening on the streets is a very different conversation, and I think the American people are starting to wake up to that. But Chad Robichaux, I appreciate you coming on tonight, breaking down where we stand when it comes to the idea of police and protests. Thank you very much.